My son suggested that I get out of the Jeep to feel how hot the sand was. We took a few pictures together. Then I decided to walk a few meters along the sand dunes. I heard the car start. I turned around. They were 10 meters away from me, my son and daughter-in-law. He smiled. She waved at me, stepped on the gas, and they disappeared. I was left alone in the middle of the desert with one bottle of water in my hands. You know, if you'd told me that's how my big New Year's gift from my children would end, I'd have laughed and asked you what you were drinking. But that's getting ahead of myself. My name's Hannah. 67, American, retired school secretary, 3-time chili cook-off winner, widow of one very patient man named John, and apparently mother to a son with the spine of a boiled noodle and a wife who could give rattlesnakes a run for their money. 6 months before I found myself standing in all that golden nothingness, it was New Year's Eve in my little house in Ohio. Snow outside, pot roast in the oven, and my son Ethan and his wife, Brianna, sitting at my kitchen table looking like a lifestyle magazine spread for a smug young couple of the year. Ethan used to have my eyes soft brown, kind, always thinking. These days his eyes looked at me like I was an overdue bill he didn't quite know how to pay. Mom, he said, pushing an envelope across the table toward me, we've been planning this for months. We wanted to do something special for you this year. Brianna pressed her glossy lips together in what I think she thought was a warm smile. On her, it looked a little like a shark had just smelled blood. It's from both of us, she said. You deserve a break. I'd been a widow 5 years by then. I lived alone in the house John and I bought back when interest rates were low and we were both stupid enough to think our knees would never hurt. I managed just fine on his pension and my savings. I had a vegetable garden, a book club, 2 girlfriends who were better than therapy, and a perfectly good life. Did I feel lonely sometimes? Of course, but I had my routines, my coffee at 7, my walk around the block at 9, my shows at night, a small life. Maybe, but it was mine. So when my son handed me that envelope, my heart did a little foolish leap. Some soft part of me, the part that still remembered his sticky toddler hugs and his gangly teenage apologies, wanted to believe he'd thought of me, really thought of me. I opened it carefully. Inside were 2 plane tickets and a glossy brochure. On the cover, a couple stood at the top of a golden dune holding hands, their hair blowing romantically in a sunset that looked heavily edited. Desert Dream Holidays, I read. 10 days in the sands of Alkamar. Alkamar, tiny desert country somewhere between the headlines and the weather map. I'd vaguely heard of it mostly as one of those places rich men flew to in private jets and women like me watched on travel shows. You're taking me on vacation? I asked, a little breathless. Brianna beamed. We're taking you with us. Our gift. We leave in March, when it's not too hot yet. Spa hotel, desert tour, everything included. We thought you'd love it. And I did. I absolutely did. I felt like someone had plugged me into an outlet. 67, and my kids were taking me on an international trip. I could already see myself on Facebook, posting pictures with sunset filters and geotags my church friends wouldn't know how to pronounce. Oh honey, I said, standing up to hug Ethan. He stiffened for just a second, then patted my back like I was a neighbor he barely knew. You really didn't have to. We wanted to, he said. What he meant was, she insisted. I saw that flash across his face like a shadow, but I ignored it because I wanted the fairy tale. That's the thing about mothers. We're professionals at ignoring the bad lighting when it comes to our kids. That night, after they left to go to some party downtown with friends, I sat at my kitchen table with that brochure like it was a love letter. 10 days in a 5-star hotel, desert safari in a Jeep, camel rides, a visit to some ancient fortress, spa treatments. I could almost feel the sand between my toes and taste the little umbrella drinks I planned to order. The next Sunday, I brought the brochure to church like a teenager with an engagement ring. You're going where? My friend Liz squinted at the brochure over her bifocals. Alkamar, I said, as if I'd been saying it my whole life. It's in the desert. Ethan and Brianna are taking me. Their New Year's gift. You're going to ride a camel? Nora asked. Nora was 70 and had artificial knees but still wore heels to church, so she had no right to judge. I am going to ride a camel, I said, and get one of those henna tattoos on my hand like the young girls on the travel shows. And I'm going to send you all pictures so you can be jealous. They laughed, and I laughed with them, high on the idea that for once, my kids were doing something big for me. I told everyone, the lady at the pharmacy, my book club, the mailman per man, just trying to get through his route, and there I was, holding up his day with dune itineraries. "Your kids must really love you," people said. And you know what? I believed them. The first crack in the dream was small, tiny even, easy to smooth over with a smile. It was at the bank. I'd gone in to take care of some business, nothing dramatic, just moving a CD that had matured, and my usual teller, Carmen, looked up my account and her eyebrows did a little jump. "Planning something big, Miss Lewis?" she asked. "Your son was in here last week asking about your accounts." I blinked. "Ethan?" She nodded, said you'd asked him to help you with some online banking things. I didn't give him any details, of course, just talked generalities, but I thought I'd mention it. I hadn't asked Ethan for any help. "I handled my own online banking just fine. Thank you very much. I could pay my own bills and stream my own shows and even send a GIF when properly motivated." "Oh," I said lightly, "probably a misunderstanding." And then I went home, made myself a cup of tea, and told myself exactly that misunderstanding. Maybe he was just curious. Maybe he was worried I was giving all my money to some Nigerian prince in my DMs. Mothers are very good at maybes. In March, the snow started to melt and my suitcase came out of the closet. I packed every light cotton thing I owned, 2 sensible pairs of sandals, a wide-brimmed hat that made me look like a gardening show host, the nice linen pants I'd bought on sale and never had occasion to wear. When Ethan came to pick me up for the airport, he stared at the suitcase like he'd forgotten who suggested the trip in the first place. "Wow, Mom," he said, "you're really excited about this." "Yes, I am," I said. "Is that a problem?" Brianna appeared behind him, dragging her sleek black luggage as if she were in an advertisement. "Of course not," she said. "We just want you to relax. Let us handle everything. Right, Ethan?" He nodded, eyes already on his phone. Always on his phone. If that boy could marry his screen, he would have years ago. At the airport, Brianna took charge. She had a travel pouch, color-coded folders, printouts of everything. "You don't need to worry about a thing," she kept saying. "We've got your tickets, your hotel, everything. You just follow us." It felt nice, actually. After years of doing everything myself, it was a little luxurious to be shepherded for once. I told that to my girlfriends in a group text while we waited at the gate. "They're really spoiling me, girls. I don't have to think about a thing." Nora sent back a string of heart emojis and a camel. I didn't know my phone even had a camel emoji. On the plane, Ethan took the window seat. Brianna took the aisle. I had the middle seat, which I didn't mind. My knees were short and my patience was long. Halfway through the flight, I took my phone out to play Sudoku. "Mom," Brianna said, leaning over, "don't forget to turn off roaming when we land. The charges are insane here. Why don't you just leave your phone in the hotel safe most of the time? We'll be with you. If anyone needs you, they can call Ethan." Ethan nodded without looking up. "Yeah, Mom. Just give us the hotel number. It's safer." I hesitated. My phone was my little lifeline. It had the pictures of John, my recipes, my passwords, my friends, my book club chat, my weather app that I checked even when I wasn't going anywhere. But I didn't want to be the fussy old lady they had to manage, so I smiled. "We'll see," I said. "I kind of like my solitaire." She gave me that patient, fake smile. The one that said, "You'll do what I want eventually." Al-Kamar was sun and white stone and glass. Even at the airport, the air felt different, drier, sharper, filled with languages that trickled and rolled like water over rocks. The hotel was something else entirely. Marble floors, chandeliers, staff who called me madam and tried to take my suitcase even though it was older than some of them. Our room, well, their room faced the ocean. My room faced the courtyard, which I didn't mind. The courtyard had fountains and palm trees and a little cafe with tiny cups of coffee that could wake the dead. That first night, I stood at my balcony and felt expansive, big, like I'd stepped out of my tidy little life and into one of those glossy brochures. I slept like a baby. The next morning, Brianna burst into my room without knocking, all athleisure and teeth. "Desert safari day," she sang. "You ready, Hannah?" I rolled my eyes. She'd never quite taken to calling me Mom. Sometimes it was Hannah, sometimes nothing at all. Once it was "Your mother," said right in front of me, as if I were furniture. "I've been ready since Ohio," I told her. She eyed my outfit. Soft cotton pants, long sleeve shirt, hat. She said. "We'll get you a scarf. Do you have your phone?" "Yes." She held out her hand. "I'll put it in my bag for you. You don't want sand getting in it, and there's no signal out there anyway." I should have said no. I should have slipped it into my bra like Nora always did when she traveled. But Ethan walked in right then, looking tired and distracted, and I didn't want to start a fight. So I handed her my phone. She slipped it into her designer tote with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The Jeep was waiting outside the hotel, white, dusty, with a local driver in sunglasses. We climbed in, and I felt a little like a kid again. The city fell away behind us, replaced by flat scrubland that slowly, almost slyly, turned into sand. Endless sand. At first it was exciting. The dunes grew bigger, rolling like frozen waves. The sky was a dome of hard blue. The wind picked up, hot and sharp, whipping my hair around my face. Our driver took us to a tourist camp, first low tents, carpets on the sand, metal teapots, other tourists with cameras. We had tea. We watched a couple of young men show off with their 4x4 seconds, diving up and down the dunes like dolphins. Ethan took pictures of me, half laughing as I held onto my hat. Send those to the girls, I told him. Let them see I'm still alive. Brianna smiled tightly. We will. After a while, people started drifting back toward the camp, but our driver came over, conferred with Ethan and Brianna in low voices, then turned to me. Your son drive now, he said in broken English. He smiled, all teeth. He very good. We take you deeper in desert for special pictures. Well, how can I say no to special pictures? I said. Ethan looked uneasy. Now that I think back, his smile didn't quite fit. Sweat stood out on his upper lip even though the breeze was strong. Come on, Mom, he said. It'll be fun. Once in a lifetime thing, right? If I'd listened to my gut, I would have asked to go back to the hotel. But mothers are trained to trust their children, even when we shouldn't. We said goodbye to the driver. Ethan slid behind the wheel. Brianna put on oversized sunglasses that made her look like a wasp. I climbed into the back. We drove and drove. The camp disappeared. The other jeeps became specks, then nothing. The tracks behind us blurred in the wind. It was just us and the dunes and the sound of the engine and the occasional nervous laugh from me. How far are we going? I asked. Just a bit more, Brianna said. This guide told us about a really photogenic spot. Didn't he, Ethan? Yeah, he muttered. Photogenic. We crested a particularly high dune and stopped on a ridge. The view was astonishing. Sand stretching in every direction, peach and golden cream, rippling like an ocean pause mid-storm. Ethan turned off the engine. Wow, I said softly. It's beautiful. Come on, Mom, he said. Get out. You have to feel how hot the sand is. And that's where we started. I stepped out of the Jeep, the heat slapping my face like a wet towel from hell. My son suggested that I get out of the Jeep to feel how hot the sand was. We took a few pictures together. Then I decided to walk a few meters along the sand dunes. I heard the car start. I turned around. They were 10 meters away from me, my son and daughter-in-law. He smiled. She waved at me, stepped on the gas, and they disappeared. I was left alone in the middle of the desert with one bottle of water in my hands. At first, I laughed. I actually laughed. Very funny. I called out, shading my eyes. Okay, you too. Bring the car back. Hannah's had enough National Geographic for one day. The Jeep arced down the dune, sand spraying behind it in a rooster tail. It looked like a commercial. Two beautiful young people, wind in their hair, laughing at the wheel. Surely they were going to loop around and come back up. Any second now. The Jeep grew smaller, then very, very small. The engine noise faded, swallowed by the wind. My smile broke first. Ethan, I called louder. Enough. I'm too old for practical jokes. Nothing. No dusty white dot turning back. No familiar engine whine. Just silence and the soft hiss of shifting sand. My heartbeat started thudding in my ears. I took stock. One straw hat. One pair of sandals. One long-sleeved shirt already sticking to my back. One bottle of water lukewarm, half full. No phone. No money. No bag. No shade. Okay, I muttered out loud, because if there was ever a time to start talking to myself, this was it. Let's not panic yet, Hannah. They're probably just being idiots. They'll come back when they realize the joke isn't funny. I stood there, watching the horizon, waiting for the punchline. 5 minutes, 10, 15. You measure time differently when you're watching for salvation in 360 degrees of nothing. The sun climbed higher. The sand under my feet felt like a stovetop. Sweat crawled down my spine. My mouth went dry in the way that had nothing to do with thirst and everything to do with fear. I opened the water bottle, took the tiniest sip, and closed it again. You are not dying out here, I told myself. You still haven't finished reorganizing the kitchen drawers. It's funny, the things you cling to. I turned slowly, trying to see any sign of human life. A camp, a jeep, a cigarette butt, anything, nothing. Just dunes, big ones, small ones, all of them shimmering and shifting like they were breathing together. I knew, in some distant, rational part of my brain, that people paid good money to come out here and feel this isolation. Spiritual retreats, soul searching, whatever. I just wanted a bad cup of hotel coffee. Panic is loud, survival is quiet. The loud part hit first. My breathing got choppy. My thoughts ran in frantic circles. What if they're actually lost? What if they had an accident? What if no, Hannah, you saw them? They drove away in a straight line like they had GPS for betrayal. The quiet part came after. That was the part of me that had sat by John's hospital bed, that had planned a funeral while saying I was fine, that had gotten up every day afterward and made coffee and went on. That woman took over. Move, she said. So I did. If there's one thing you learn living past 60, it's that standing still rarely improves a bad situation. The sun was brutal now. I needed shade, any shade, and preferably a higher vantage point. I picked the closest big dune and started walking sideways up it, like I'd seen on TV. Every step slid back halfway. Sand filled my sandals. I kept going. At the top I stopped, hands on my knees, lungs working like bellows. Nothing. Well, not nothing. In the far distance, toward what I thought was the direction we'd come from, the light looked different, like there might be a flatter patch, maybe where the camp had been. Fine, I muttered. We'll go that way. I took another tiny sip of water. The bottle felt pathetically light. Ethan, I said into the empty air, if I survive this, I swear to God, I am changing my will. And just like that, anger lit up under my fear. It helped. With every step, I replayed everything. The bank comment, the way Brianna had taken my phone, the way Ethan had flinched when I hugged him, the envelope, the too polished trip, the way they'd looked at each other before the Jeep drove away. I saw it clearly now, in the way you only see red flags when they're far, far behind you. This was a plan, I said. My voice sounded scratchy. They planned this. The realization hurt so much I almost missed the sun. People always talk about the heat in deserts, like it's a number. 110 degrees, 120. Numbers don't mean anything out there. The heat isn't a temperature, it's a presence. It wraps around you, seeps into you, pokes at your bones. My hat felt useless. My clothes clung. My skin burned, but I kept walking. The world narrowed to the next step, and the next, and the next. I stumbled once, caught myself, and laughed a short, ugly sound. Oh no, you don't, I told the desert. If anyone's going to kill me, it'll be the cardiology department at Steedy. Mary's after I eat too much bacon, not you. Hours passed, or minutes. Time went weird. The sun moved at least, slowly, but it moved. I rationed the water, one small sip every time. My vision started to fuzz around the edges. My thoughts wandered. I thought about John, who would have raised hell with anyone who looked sideways at me. I thought about the day Ethan was born, how I'd held him in that chilly hospital room and promised him I'd always protect him. I thought about how nobody tells you that one day, you might need protection from your own child. That promise expired the moment your tires left my sight. I told the memory of his newborn face. Congratulations, kid. You voided the warranty. At some point, the light changed. The sky softened from harsh blue to gold. The shadows got longer. The heat let go just enough for the sweat to turn clammy instead of sizzling. Night in the desert, another thing I'd seen on TV. Stars, cool breezes, romantic music. In reality, it was like someone had pulled the plug on the world. The temperature dropped with a speed that felt insulting. 1 minute I was cooking. The next, I was shivering in my thin shirt, my teeth starting to chatter. I hadn't found the camp. In fact, I had no idea where I was anymore. The dunes looked different in the changing light, their edges sharper, their valleys deeper. The little patch of flatness I'd been aiming for turned out to be just more sand. My legs shook. My knees threatened mutiny. My water bottle held a sad little swallow. Well, I said, sinking down behind the leeward side of a dune to escape the wind. It's official. This is the worst vacation I've ever been on. And that includes the time John took me camping in a leaky tent in '84. I pulled my knees up to my chest, hugging them for warmth. Sand crept into everything: my hair, my clothes, my soul. I looked up. The stars were obscene. There were so many of them, layered on top of each other like spilled sequins across black velvet. I could see the hazy band of the Milky Way, the kind of thing you only see in screensavers back home. Somewhere, someone probably would have found this spiritual. Me, I found it motivating. You hear me, God? I said, hoarse. I am not done. I've got at least 10 more years of complaining left in me. You are not taking me out in the sandbox because my idiot offspring grew a conscience about inheritance. The wind whispered. The stars stared. But I felt, noticed. It could have been dehydration or stubbornness. Hard to tell the difference at my age. I forced myself to take the last sip of water before I lay down. The bottle looked very small in my hand, an empty, useless thing. Unlike me. Tomorrow, I told myself, tomorrow you get up, you walk, somebody finds you, and when you get back, you make sure those to regret the day they decided to get creative. The sand was surprisingly soft under my cheek. The wind hummed a lullaby in a language I didn't know. I drifted in and out, half asleep, waking every time my body shivered to hard. Somewhere in the night, I thought I heard an engine. I jerked up, heart pounding, but all I saw were dunes and stars and darkness. Dreaming, I muttered. Wonderful. Now I'm hallucinating combustion engines. When the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, gray and pale, I tried to stand. Tried. My legs complained in stereo. My head spun. My tongue felt like leather. Up, I ordered. We got this far. We're not quitting because of a little thing like physical collapse. I made it to my feet on the third attempt. The world wobbled. I started walking again. It's strange how small you can feel and still be determined. I was a dot moving between bigger dots in a vast, indifferent sea of sand. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody even knew I was missing yet. Ethan and Brianna. Well, they knew. But they also knew where my house keys were, where my will was, where my checkbook sat in its little drawer. I could almost see them. Back home, faces solemn, voices trembling as they told my relatives that I'd wandered off on vacation, that they were devastated, that the authorities were doing everything they could. They'd cry on cue, I was sure. Brianna always did love an audience. The thought made my stomach turn. Anger flared again, sharp as a match lighting in dry brush. Oh no, I rasped. You don't get to have my house and my sympathy. The air shimmered ahead of me. For a second, I thought it was another mirage. I'd already seen 3 suspiciously lake-shaped patches that dissolved as I approached. But this one was different, lower, moving. I squinted, shielding my eyes with my hand. Something metallic flashed. A sound reached me, faint at first, then clearer. Engines, real ones, multiple. I laughed, or tried to. It came out like a cough. About time, I whispered. I waved both arms, which felt like they were full of stones. Hey, I croaked. Over here. The dots grew larger, resolving into shapes, jeeps, plural, bouncing over the dunes with much more dignity than I'd managed. Voices carried on the wind. I caught snatches of words, French, maybe, and something else. Laughter. Hey, I tried again, louder than I thought I had in me. I am not dying out here just to make my daughter-in-law's life easier. One of the jeeps veered slightly, then more. Someone pointed. I laughed again, dizzy with relief and something like triumph. Of course I'd arranged my own rescue. Who else was going to? The jeeps pulled closer, engines growling, sand spraying. The first one stopped a few yards away. A man jumped out, tall, in a sun hat and sunglasses, followed by a woman with a bandana over her hair. Madam, he called in accented English. Are you okay? I opened my mouth to answer something witty, something like, I've had better Tuesdays, but my knees buckled. Your body has a sense of drama, let me tell you. It will keep you upright just long enough to make an entrance. The last thing I felt was strong arms catching me. The last thing I heard was a woman's voice, urgent and close. Water, get her water. Vite, vite. And then the desert went dark. When I woke up, there was no sand under my cheek. There was a pillow. A thin, scratchy pillow, sure, and the air smelled like antiseptic and boiled cabbage. But it was a pillow. Something beeped steadily nearby. Fabric rustled. Someone was humming. I opened my eyes. White ceiling, flickering fluorescent light, faded blue curtain, a hospital. Well, looks like Hannah Lewis had survived her children. Good, because they had no idea what was coming next. I've always said if I wake up and I'm not wearing church clothes, it's not my funeral. So when I opened my eyes to a hospital gown and an 4 in my arm, I figured my odds were still pretty good. The ceiling above me was cracked in a pattern that looked like the map of a country no one bothered to name. The air smelled of disinfectant, boiled something, and too many people breathing the same air. To my left, a monitor beeped steadily. To my right, a faded curtain did a half-hearted job of pretending I had privacy. My mouth felt like sandpaper. My skin was tight and hot. Every joint hurt, but I was alive. Well, I croaked. That's going to be disappointing for some people. A short, round nurse in a pale blue uniform appeared at the edge of the curtain like I'd summoned her. Her dark hair had escaped its bun, and she had the look of someone who'd seen everything twice and didn't find it impressive anymore. "Ah," she said in accented English, her face softening. "You wake." "Unfortunately for my ears," I murmured. "Water?" She smiled, understanding that word perfectly. A straw touched my lips, and I sipped like it was liquid diamonds. I could have kissed that plastic cup. "Slow," she warned. "Your body, it is very dry." "So is my humor," I said. "We'll rehydrate both." She frowned, not quite catching the joke, then patted my hand anyway. "Doctor, come," she said. "You rest." Rest sounded lovely, but I'd had enough sand-based resting to last a lifetime. "I need to know where I am," I said. "And when. And if my face looks as bad as it feels." "Alkamar City Hospital," she said. "You come yesterday evening with tourists." "Very lucky." "Another hour." "Not so lucky." "Story of my life," I muttered, always hitting the deadline with seconds to spare. Footsteps sounded. A man in a white coat appeared, stethoscope around his neck, thin gold-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. Mid-40s, I guessed. The kind of man who'd been handsome once and then worked too much to keep track. "Madam Lewis," he said in careful English. "How are you feeling?" "Like I lost a fight with a hairdryer and a treadmill," I said. "But I've been worse." He smiled faintly. "You were severely dehydrated, mild sunstroke, some muscle injury from exertion. But you are, how you say, stubborn." "You have no idea," I answered. He checked my chart. "Can you tell me what happened?" My throat tightened. The images flashed behind my eyes, the ridge of sand, the engine revving, Ethan's smile, Brianna's wave. "My son suggested that I get out of the Jeep to feel how hot the sand was," I said slowly. "We took a few pictures. Then he and his wife drove away." The doctor's brows pulled together. "They left you? Alone?" "Yes," I said. "With a bottle of water and a whole lot of misplaced maternal affection." He glanced at the nurse, who made a soft clicking sound with her tongue. "Did you have argument? Maybe they went to get help?" he asked. "If they went to get help," I said dryly, "they must have gotten lost on the way back to the hospital." He hesitated. "We have not had any, how you say, inquiry. No one asked for you. The tourists who bring you, they find you by chance." Somewhere inside me, something hard settled into place. Not a crack, a stone. "Of course they didn't ask for me," I said. "They were counting on me staying lost." He cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "We will contact your embassy." "You have passport?" "It was in my bag," I said. "Which was in the Jeep." "Which is, I assume, now joyriding somewhere between my dignity and my retirement fund." The nurse made another sympathetic sound. "We have your name from the tourists," the doctor said. "They find card in your pocket, hotel card, handwritten name." "You are from America?" "Yes," I said. "Hannah Lewis, from Ohio, widow, grand mistress of poor life decisions apparently." "We will tell the embassy," he repeated, clinging to procedure like a life raft. "For now, you rest. Your body needs time." "Rest," I echoed. "Sure. And after that, revenge." He blinked. "Pardon?" "Recovery," I corrected smoothly. "I meant recovery. The thing about being a woman my age is that people hear what they expect. They see your wrinkles and your thinning hair and your soft middle and they think, harmless. It's a fantastic disguise." I closed my eyes again, not to rest, to plan. The embassy woman arrived the next day. I'd been moved to a less critical room for beds, 3 occupied, 1 fan that worked when it felt like it. My 4 had been downgraded. My color had improved from desert corpse to overcooked shrimp, and I was strong enough to sit up without the world spinning too much. She swept in like she was late for a performance. Sharp navy suit, sensible heels, blonde hair twisted into something precise at the back of her head. Her badge flashed. Her eyes were all business. "Mrs. Lewis?" she said. "Miss." I corrected automatically. "Hannah." She stuck out a hand. "I'm Laura Hastings from the U.S. Embassy. I'm very glad to see you awake." "Me too," I said. My alternative options were not appealing. She sat down on the metal chair by my bed, crossing one leg over the other. "We've been trying to reach your family," she said, "but so far, no answer." My eyebrows shot up. "You've called them?" "Yes. Your son, Ethan Lewis. He was listed as your emergency contact with the airline. We've left messages." I smiled thinly. "Oh, I'm sure they'll be devastated to hear I've spoiled their tragic narrative." She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" So I told her. Not everything, we didn't have that kind of time, and not with the colorful commentary I might have preferred. But enough. The trip, the envelope, the Jeep, the desert. Her lips pressed into a line. "Abandoning a person in the desert would be a criminal offense here," she said. "But without proof. Without proof, I'm just an old lady with heat stroke and a bad attitude," I finished. "I know." She studied me for a moment, maybe expecting tears. "Hysteria. Something." "Mrs. Lahana," she corrected herself. "Right now, the priority is getting you home safely. You don't have your passport, your phone, or any money, and you're not in condition to travel yet. We'll need to get you a temporary travel document. The paperwork may take some time." "Time I have," I said. "They've already buried me once. They can wait for the sequel." She frowned slightly. "What do you mean, buried you?" "Oh, come on," I said. "You're not stupid. My son and his charming wife fly home without me, claim I disappeared. They cry to the relatives. They wait a respectful period and then start helping themselves to everything I own. It's the oldest story in the world, just with more sand. We can't be sure that's what they've done," she said automatically. I raised an eyebrow. "You want to place a bet on that, Laura?" Something in my eyes must have convinced her. She looked away first. "I'll keep trying to reach them," she said. "In the meantime, the hospital will keep you here until you're stable, and we'll arrange for some temporary assistance. It might not be much. I've been making not much work my whole life," I told her, "but I appreciate it." She stood. "We'll talk again soon." She hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, Miss Lewis, I'm glad you made it." "So am I said. "My daughter-in-law, less so." I stayed in that hospital 11 days, long enough to watch the ceiling cracks become old friends, long enough to learn the nurses' names and gossip, long enough to understand that while the doctors did their best, this was not a place designed for extended stays. The embassy sent a small stipend for emergency needs. It covered some meds, food, and a pair of cheap sandals from the hospital volunteer box for when I was finally allowed to walk the corridor. Every day, I asked the nurses if anyone had called for me. Every day, they shook their heads. "Maybe they do not know," my favorite nurse, Salma, suggested on day 6. "Maybe your son thinks you are still with the hotel." "They know," I said. "They're just hoping I'm not." On day 8, Laura came back with a temporary travel document. It was essentially a fancy piece of paper with my name and one of the worst photos ever taken of me. "Once you're discharged," she said, "you'll need to get to the capital and go through the airport with this. The embassy can't buy your ticket home, I'm afraid. There are limits to what we can provide, but we can help you contact people, transfer funds." "I don't have my bank information," I interrupted. "It was in my phone, my passwords at home. And if I'm right about what my son has been up to, my funds may be less available than you think." She hesitated. "We can try to call your bank together." "Not yet," I said. "I'm not ready to tip my hand." She gave me a look. "You're thinking about revenge." "I'm thinking about justice," I said mildly. "Sometimes they look similar from a distance. You're not exactly in a position to fight a legal battle from here," she pointed out. "Then I suppose I'd better get out of here," I replied. "Don't you worry, Laura. People like my son count on the elderly being weak and confused. I am neither. I'm just temporarily underhydrated." She huffed a small, reluctant laugh. "Try not to get yourself abandoned anywhere else before you leave the country, okay?" "No promises," I said. "Trouble seems to like me." The day I left the hospital, the sun was bright but bearable. I'd moved freely from the bed to the doorway, as the doctor put it, without wobbling too much. My skin had stopped protesting every movement. My hair was still a disaster, but that was hardly the hospital's fault. Salma hugged me, ignoring whatever rule said nurses weren't supposed to do that. "You are a strong woman, Hannah," she said into my shoulder. "Like camel." "I will take that as the highest compliment," I replied, hugging her back. The hospital bill was significant. The embassy stipend covered a portion. A local charity associated with the hospital covered a bit more when they heard my full story. But when all was said and done, I stepped out into the heat with what amounted to $10, a paper travel document, a borrowed dress from a volunteer box, and a pair of cheap sandals. No phone, no contacts, no sweet little Uber app to whisk me anywhere. But I was on my feet. And that was enough. The city around the hospital was noisy and chaotic. Cars honked with no regard for traffic rules. Motorbikes wove between them like dragonflies. Women in abayas and men in dashtashes moved with a purpose I couldn't decipher. Vendors shouted over one another in markets that smelled of spices, exhaust, and humanity. I stood there on the sidewalk, hugging my thin bag of belongings to my chest, and for the first time since the desert I felt something close to small. I need a plan, I muttered, preferably one that doesn't involve prostitution or organ harvesting. The embassy could help me once I got to the capital. But getting to the capital and then buying a ticket home, different story. The emergency assistance had a limit, and I'd already hit most of it. I needed money, enough for a bus or shared taxi to the capital and then a plane ticket. A one-way flight to Ohio from here wasn't cheap. I'd never had to hustle in my life. I'd worked, yes, every job from diner waitress to school secretary, but always with paperwork and paychecks, not whatever this was going to be. Behind me, someone cleared his throat. Madam, a tentative voice said. I turned. He was standing by a faded white Toyota, hands shoved in his pockets like he wasn't sure what to do with them. Early 50s, I guessed. Dark hair with threads of gray at the temples, clean shaven, a shirt that had been ironed at some point in the last year, which already put him above half the men I'd seen outside. I recognized him. You're one of the tourists, I said, squinting. From the jeeps. He smiled, a little awkward. Yes, my name is Kareem. The last time I'd seen him properly, I'd been half delirious, collapsing into his arms. Not the first impression I'd have chosen, but we don't always get to pick. Nice to meet you when I'm upright, I said. I'd shake your hand, but I'm not sure I won't fall over. He stepped forward, holding out his hand anyway, then shifted it into an awkward half bow when he realized I wasn't joking. You are well? He asked. The doctors say you are. Better? Better than dead, I said, which was almost the alternative. So yes, thank you. I don't think I said that properly the first time, or at all. It was lucky, he said. We change route at last minute. My son wants to see a different dune. We see you walking. It was. He searched for the word. Strange. Wrong. I've been called worse, I said, but I appreciate your intervention. He glanced at the hospital, then back at me. You go to hotel now? The question hung in the air like a reminder. I took a breath. There it was, that moment when you either tell the truth and risk pity, or you lie and end up sleeping under a bridge. I don't have a hotel, I said plainly, or money, or a phone. My delightful family took care of all that. I'm trying to figure out how to get to the capital so I can throw myself at the mercy of the bureaucracy some more. He studied me for a long moment. One of his eyebrows lifted slightly, like he was reading fine print. You have no one to send you money? He asked. No. Other family? I have a brother in Florida, I said, whom I haven't talked to in 3 years because his new wife believes essential oils can cure cancer, and I told her exactly what I thought about that. And I have friends back home who would sell their couch to help me if I asked, but I can't get to them, not without a phone. And anyway, the thought of calling and saying, hi, could you wire me money because my son tried to kill me, is not high on my list of joys this week. Kareem's mouth twitched, just a little. You joke, he said. I breathe, I said. Sometimes they're the same. He looked at the thin plastic bag in my hand, at my sandals, at the hospital bracelet still wrapped around my wrist. Then he took his hands out of his pockets and straightened his shoulders, as if he'd made some internal decision. Come, he said. We go to my house. I blinked. That is a very dramatic offer for a woman you only know as the dehydrated American. He nodded. Yes, my mother would say I am crazy, but I have 2 sons who ask me every day about the lady from the sand. They will be very angry if I do not at least invite you for tea. Tea. In my experience, most of the world's important decisions have been made over tea. I weighed my options. On the one hand, stranger danger, foreign country, vulnerable older woman. Every travel advisory poster ever printed would scream no. On the other hand, the embassy's support had already hit its limit. My feet hurt, and this man had literally carried me out of the desert. Besides, I had one advantage most damsels in distress and cautionary tales do not. I was far too old and too broke to be of much interest to traffickers. If someone wanted to kidnap me at this point, they'd be getting a bad deal. Is your wife home? I asked. Always check for a wife. Wives are referees in the game of male impulse. His face darkened briefly. My wife died 3 years ago, he said. Cancer. I felt a pang. Loss recognizes loss across any language. I'm sorry, I said quietly. He shrugged one shoulder. My boys and I, we manage. We have some family, some neighbors. Not perfect, but we manage. He jutted his chin toward the car. Please, Hannah, come. My home is not a hotel, but it has chairs. You look like you could use a chair. My standards have never been lower, I said. Lead the way. Kareem's house was in a neighborhood the tourist brochures didn't show. Narrow streets, concrete buildings, some with rebar sticking out at the edges like half-finished thoughts. Laundry strung between balconies like colored flags. Kids playing soccer in alleys. Dogs trotting along like they owned the place. It wasn't unsafe exactly, just real. Life-sized after the marble sheen of the hotel and the sterile white of the hospital. His house was 3 stories, wedged between 2 others, with a small tile entryway and a battered blue door. Inside, it was clean but worn. The sofa had seen better days. The rug in the living room had a coffee stain that someone had tried to scrub out and almost, but not quite, succeeded. Welcome, he said, almost formally, as he opened the door and gestured me inside. 2 boys exploded out of a side room like they'd been launched. Baba, Baba, is it her? Is it the lady? The older one shouted. He was maybe 12, all elbows and energy. The younger, around 8, hung back half a step, eyes wide. This is Hannah, Kareem said in Arabic first, then repeated it in English. Say hello, use your English. The older boy straightened, suddenly self-conscious. Hello, he said carefully. My name is Ahmed. This is my brother Yusuf. We are very happy that you are not dead. It was so earnest I almost laughed, which would have ruined it. I am very happy I am not dead too, I said, sticking out my hand. Thank you for being glad about it. Yusuf sidled forward and shook my hand solemnly, like a little diplomat. Kareem ushered me to the sofa and brought tea in small glass cups, strong and sweet. Someone had told him Americans like sugar. We sat. The boys stared at me like I'd walked out of a movie. Kareem watched me over the rim of his cup. How long until you can go home? Ahmed asked suddenly. I sipped my tea. Buying time. That, I said, depends on a lot of things. Airplanes, paperwork, money, the kindness of strangers, the vengeful nature of God. Kareem cleared his throat. The hospital bill, he said. The embassy woman told me you could not pay all of it. I'm good for it, I said. Eventually, but good for it doesn't get you on a plane. He hesitated. How much do you need to go home? There it was, the question, the opening. If I were a different kind of woman, this would have been the moment I lied, inflated the number, took advantage. But I had spent my whole life being dependable, and nearly dying in a desert wasn't going to change that. A flight home will be around 1,000, maybe a bit more, I said. Then some for the trip to the capital. Food, odds and ends. I'd say 1,500 to 2,000 would get me there with some wiggle room. 3,000 would mean I could do it without counting every grain of rice. Kareem nodded slowly. 3,000, he repeated. US dollars. Yes, I said, which I do not have in my pocket. He put his tea down. I have some savings, he said, for my house, for repairs. After the flood last year, the roof. He gestured upward, and I noticed for the first time the water stains on the ceiling. Also, I am trying to help rebuild the small school in my village. It was damaged, but it is slow. His boys went still, listening. I am not a rich man, he continued, but I have something. Enough to lend you 3,000. Ahmed's head snapped toward him. Baba. Kareem raised a hand. The boy fell silent, but his eyes flashed. I set my cup down very carefully. Kareem, I said, that is an extraordinary offer for a woman you met in a sand dune while I was auditioning for the role of dehydrated corpse. He shrugged, a little embarrassed. You are alone. You have no one. My mother, may God rest her soul, she would haunt me if I let you sleep on the street. Also, he looked up, meeting my eyes head on. I believe you, he said simply. About your son, about what they did. A man who leaves his mother in the desert, he will answer for this. Maybe not to the law, but to something. I have every intention of being that something, I said, personally. His mouth quirked. Good, he said, but, I added, I cannot take that kind of money from you without a plan. I have a house back home, or at least, I did. I have savings, pensions, things. Once I get back, I will repay you every cent. And not just that, He tilted his head. What do you mean? I looked around the room. At the water stains, at the patched sofa, at the boys' school books stacked neatly in a corner, covers worn. How much do you need to rebuild your house properly? I asked. And the school? He blinked. I don't know exactly, he admitted. The estimates are, he made a face, too high. For now, we fix little by little. A roof here, some paint there. The school, they have a generator that works sometimes. The children share books. They are used to it. This is how it is. I thought of my book club back home, complaining because the library's new chairs weren't ergonomic enough. How many children? I asked. Maybe 40, he said. Sometimes more, sometimes less. 40. 40 children in a half-broken building with a part-time generator, while my ungrateful offspring were probably picking out granite countertops for the kitchen they didn't pay for. Listen to me, Kareem, I said, leaning forward. I am going to propose something. His sons leaned in too, like this was the climax of a spy movie. You lend me $3,000, I said. If you can, I will use it to get home. When I get there, I will call you. I will transfer that $3,000 back to you as soon as I access my accounts. And I will send you an additional $12,000 over the next year. Not as charity, as thanks for your trust, for saving my life twice. His eyes widened. Ahmed made a quiet choking sound. 12,000? Kareem said. That is, Hannah. This is too much. You do not need to. Do not tell me what I need to do, I said sharply. I am an old woman who just walked out of a desert and is currently powered entirely by spite and tea. If I say I'm going to send you $15,000, you should just ask me if I want a receipt. He stared at me. I softened my tone. I'm serious, I said. You trusted me with your home, your tea, your children. If you trust me with this money, I will not forget it. I'm not built that way. My son may not understand loyalty, but I do. Kareem rubbed a hand over his face. I cannot ask this of you, he murmured. You're not asking, I said. I am. He glanced at Ahmed and Yusuf. The boys looked like they were watching a tennis match between their father's honor and their practical needs. Baba, Ahmed said quietly in Arabic. I didn't understand the words, but the tone was pleading and a little scared. Kareem replied in the same language. From the way his shoulders squared, I guessed it was something like, we help people. That is who we are. He turned back to me. If I do this, he said slowly, it is not because I expect 12,000. It is because it is right. If you cannot send this money, then I will die of embarrassment before the universe has a chance to punish me. I interrupted. We're clear. He exhaled sharply, a laugh half buried in worry. You are a very unusual woman, Hannah, he said. Good, I replied. Ordinary women end up quietly robbed. Unusual women end up rewriting the script. We spent the next hour making it official. Kareem brought out an old metal tin from a cupboard. Inside were stacks of papers, a few wrinkled bills, a small velvet pouch. His bank, he joked. We wrote out an agreement on line notebook paper. My full name, his full name, the amount $3,000 to be repaid within 3 months of my return home, plus an additional $12,000 over 12 months for the purposes of repairing his house and rebuilding the school in his village. I insisted on the specifics. Names, addresses, my social security number, his national ID, details like anchors. We'll make copies, I said, and take pictures when I get a new phone. Redundancy is your friend, Kareem. He nodded, still looking like a man who'd voluntarily stepped into an adventure he didn't quite know the shape of. His sons watched, their eyes big. When we were done, I signed with a hand that still trembled a little. So the universe can see I agreed, I said. He signed too, his signature bold and looping. We shook hands over the kitchen table, which felt oddly solemn. There, I said, now we're bound together by bureaucracy. There is no stronger force on earth. He laughed then properly, the tension in his shoulders loosening for the first time. You will stay with us until you go to the capital, he said firmly. You are weak. The buses are not comfortable. 2, 3 days more. Rest. Eat. Teach my boys some of your American sarcasm. Gladly, I said. I was hoping to infect a new generation. Those few days in Kareem's house were, in a strange, sideways way, some of the most peaceful of my life. In the mornings, we sat at the table and I helped Ahmed and Yusuf with their English homework. They knew the basics, but their teachers were overworked and their textbooks out of date. Repeat after me, I'd say. The cat is on the table. The cat is on the table, they'd chorus. Now, I'd add, The cat is on the table because she is planning to knock everything off it at 3 a.m., as is her sacred duty. They'd grin, stumbling over sacred duty, and I'd write the new words down for them. I told them about Ohio winters, about snow and ice and how the world could be white instead of beige. They told me about sandstorms and how sometimes the dust got into everything, even their dreams. In the afternoons, while Kareem worked at the small repair shop where he was a manager, I helped his neighbor, an older woman named Amina, with making bread and gossiping. You walked in the desert alone, she would say, shaking her head. Crazy American woman. Survived walking in the desert alone, I corrected. The survived part is important. Otherwise, I'm just a cautionary tale. At night, after the boys went to bed, Kareem and I sat on the small balcony with tea. He told me about his wife, Layla, who'd been a teacher, about how she'd loved books so much that the school library had been entirely her doing, scrounging, begging, borrowing donated ones. He told me about the floods that had come 2 years after she died, tearing through his village like an angry river, ripping roofs off houses and washing away half the school. No one died, he said. That is the only blessing. But we have not been able to rebuild properly. The government says there is no money. The charities. There are many disasters in the world. We are just one small place. I listened, fingers wrapped around my cup. I could almost see it, the cracked walls, the children sitting two to a desk, the books warped from water, still read to death anyway. I don't have grandchildren, I said. Officially, Ethan and Brianna decided they were waiting for the right time, which is code for never get in the way of our vacations. But I spent 30 years in a school office. I was everyone's emergency grandmother at some point. He smiled. Then maybe my village will adopt you as grandmother, he said. Tell them to hold that thought, I replied. I've got some unfinished business first. On the second night, as the boys worked on their vocabulary lists, Kareem brought out a small tin and counted out the money. Most of it was in their local currency, but he had some US dollar notes too, saved from tourists paying in cash. International trade, he called it. We spread it out on the table, the edges held down by plates so it wouldn't flutter in the fan's erratic breeze. Are you sure? I asked one last time. This is your house, your roof, your boy's future. He nodded. I am sure. You saved my sons in their minds. They believe you are some kind of hero now. If I tell them I let their hero sleep in the street, they will never forgive me. I glanced at Ahmed and Yusuf, who were pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. I am nobody's hero, I said, but my voice came out softer than I intended. You walked out of the desert alone, Ahmed piped up, unable to contain himself. That's like the movies. Yes, Yusuf added solemnly. Like Mad Max. I snorted. I don't know who Max is, but I assure you, he didn't have arthritis. They laughed. And just like that, the money on the table stopped feeling like charity and started feeling like a partnership, a temporary loan between stubborn souls. On my last evening there, I called the embassy from Kareem's neighbor's battered old Nokia, one of those brick phones that could survive a nuclear blast. We've arranged a seat for you on a bus to the capital, Laura said. It leaves tomorrow morning at 9. The ride is long, but it's the safest option. Once you get here, come straight to the embassy. Bring your travel document. Will do, I said. And Laura, don't call my family. Not yet. She hesitated. They still haven't responded to our messages, Hannah. Not one. I had my staff dig around. They arrived home the day after your disappearance, told the local authorities you wandered off into the desert from a tourist camp, that there was a search. They filed a missing persons report, but they've been quiet since. Of course they have, I said. Less noise, fewer questions. Don't worry, I'll make enough noise for all of us soon. I can't condone any illegal actions, she said carefully. Don't worry, I soothed. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Mostly. I just happen to be very, very good at being inconvenient, she sighed, clearly not reassured. Just get here in one piece, she said. Then we'll see what we can do. Oh, I'll get there, I promised. I didn't survive your charming desert just to die in a bus accident. That night, sleep came in fits and starts. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw dunes. Every time I opened them, I saw the cracked ceiling and heard the faint snoring from down the hall, from where Ahmed and Yusuf shared a room. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up and crept out to the tiny balcony. The city was quieter but not silent. A dog barked in the distance. A baby cried somewhere. A car passed with music thumping faintly. The stars were dimmer here than in the desert, washed out by streetlights. But they were still there, watching. Tomorrow, I whispered to them. Phase 2. Phase 1 had been survival. Phase 2 was return. Phase 3, well, let's just say my son's birthday party was going to be a surprise. Kareem insisted on walking me to the bus station in the morning, the boys in tow, both carrying my small bag like it was a royal trunk instead of a saggy donated satchel. The bus station was a chaotic mess of people, luggage, fruit sellers, and honking. The bus to the capital was an aging behemoth with peeling paint and a windshield that looked like it had seen some things. Kareem pressed an envelope into my hand. Money, he said, for the ticket, some food, the taxi to the embassy. I squeezed it, feeling the thickness. I'll pay you back for this part too, I said. Every cent, plus interest in the form of American idioms for your boys. Ahmed grinned. You already teach us not my circus, not my monkeys, he said proudly. An essential phrase, I said gravely. Yusuf suddenly flung his arms around my waist. Come back, he mumbled into my borrowed dress. I intend to, I said, hugging him back. But the next time I come, no deserts. Just your village, your school, and a lot of paint. Kareem held out his hand. I ignored it and hugged him instead. Thank you, I said into his shoulder, for believing a stranger. He hugged me back, briefly but firmly. Come back alive, he said. That is all I ask. I plan on coming back annoying, I replied. Alive is the minimum. He laughed. I climbed onto the bus. The steps felt higher than they looked, but I made it. I found a window seat clutching my bag. The engine rumbled to life. Through the streaked glass, I watched Kareem and the boys grow smaller, their figures blurring. I lifted my hand. Ahmed and Yusuf waved both arms like they were trying to flag down an airplane. Kareem just stood there, one hand raised, until the bus turned out of the station and they vanished from view. I turned my face toward the front, toward the road stretching out through the city and beyond, toward the capital and the embassy and the airport and the small Ohio town where people thought I was dead. Okay, Hannah, I whispered. Let's go haunt some people. The bus pulled onto the highway. The landscape outside shifted from city to scrub to mercifully, not desert. Somewhere between 1 mile marker and the next, as the bus rattled and passengers dozed and a baby 2 rows back practiced its future opera career, I made a decision. When I got home, I was not going to sneak quietly into my life like nothing had happened. No, I was going to walk straight into the center of the story my children had been writing without me. And I was going to start by ruining my son's birthday. If there's one thing I learned in Alkmaar, it's that soon is a very stretchy word. The bus to the capital took 9 hours and approximately 17 vertebrae off my spine. The capital itself was bigger, louder, and dustier than the city I'd just left. The embassy was behind high walls and security gates, guarded like it contained state secrets instead of exhausted Americans who'd misplaced their passports. Laura met me in the waiting area, coffee in one hand, folder in the other. You made it, she said, sounding genuinely relieved. I did, I said. Your country's public transportation is very character building. She winced. I did warn you. She shepherded me through metal detectors and past grim-looking guards until we were in a small office with a big flag and a portrait of someone important staring down at us like we were misbehaving. We've got your temporary travel document processed, she said, flipping open the folder. You are officially a real person again in the eyes of the system. Wonderful, I said. Now if only my own family felt the same. She hesitated. About that, we did some digging. Like I mentioned, you disappeared on March 14th. Your son and daughter-in-law flew home the next day. Within 2 weeks, they'd filed a missing persons report and given a statement to the authorities here. You were presumed, well, lost in the desert. Presumed convenient, I said dryly. Go on. Back home, they held a memorial service in April. She continued, consulting her notes. There was an obituary. They closed out your utilities. By June, they'd petitioned the court for control of your assets, citing your presumed death abroad and your will naming your son as executor. Of course, I said. Executor. Such a tidy little word. By August, she finished, your son had moved into your house. Your bank accounts were consolidated. A for sale listing went up on your property in September. 6 months, I murmured. Efficient. I'll give them that. If only they'd applied that energy to a job instead of my estate. Laura watched me carefully, probably waiting for tears, collapse, something fragile and dramatic. Don't look so nervous, I told her. If I fall apart, I promise I'll do it after I've ruined someone's day. She almost smiled. then caught herself. There's another complication, she said. Flights. Of course there are, I sighed. Why make anything easy? Because of the situation, she said delicately. We can't pay for your ticket home. And prices haven't been kind. Even in the low season, a one-way flight is running over $1,000. There are cheaper flights months from now. But months? I repeated. Plural? She spread her hands. That's the reality. Unless you find another source of funds, you'll have to wait for the cheapest option. We can help with temporary housing arrangements. There's a list of guest houses that work with the embassy. It'll be basic. I'd just spent nearly 2 weeks in a hospital where the fan had a personality disorder. I could do basic, but it meant time. Time for my children to dig their hooks deeper into everything I owned. Time for their tragic narrative to solidify. How long are we talking? I asked. She checked her computer. If you want the absolute cheapest option, 5 months. The flight with a charity fair program leaves October 14th. I did the math. I'd disappeared in March. October would make it 7 months since my son waved me into the afterlife with his Jeep. October 14, I repeated. Any significance to that date? Not that I know of, she said. Why? I smiled slowly. Because my son's birthday is October 15th, I said. And I do love a theme. So that's how I ended up living 5 months in a cheap guest house in the capital of El Kamar. Because my own child had tried to erase me and I refused to go quietly. The guest house was a narrow building with thin walls, a temperamental water heater, and a matron who ran the place with an iron ladle. It was full of transient souls aid workers, backpackers, local traders passing through. The embassy helped cover part of the cost. The rest came out of the money Kareem had lent me. I stretched every dollar Kareem had given me like it was taffy. By day, I walked slowly at first, then with more strength to a little community center a few streets away where some local families gathered. An embassy contact had mentioned that people were always looking for English tutors. Turns out a retired American school secretary with half a voice and all her wits can teach quite a lot. Word got around. A real American, people whispered. From Ohio. I taught kids who dreamed of scholarships. I taught shopkeepers who wanted to bargain better. I taught a shy young woman who wanted to watch romantic comedies without subtitles, and an older man who wanted to Skype with his grandson in Canada. And every Saturday, I took a taxi clear across the city to spend the day with Kareem and his boys. I thought you were going to the capital and leaving us, Ahmed accused me the first time I showed up on his doorstep again. Nice to see you too, I said, and handed him a stack of English workbooks I'd talked the embassy into printing. We settled into a rhythm. Weekdays teaching, Saturdays with Kareem, Sundays at the embassy, where Laura helped me navigate the slow grind of bureaucracy and let me use their computer lab. That's where I made contact with home again carefully. First, an email to Liz and Nora, my church girlfriends. Subject, from beyond the grave sort of. Ladies, try not to faint. Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I've been stuck overseas due to a spectacular act of stupidity and malice on the part of my dear son and his decorative wife. I'm alive. I'm coming home in October. Do not, under any circumstances, tell Ethan or Brianna. I want to see their faces when their favorite ghost walks in. Love, Hannah Pease. Please confirm that my house is actually for sale and that the little monsters have not turned my kitchen into an open-plan atrocity. They wrote back within hours, all caps, as if volume could cross an ocean. Hannah, WHAT. Are you in witness protection? Are you eating? Also, yes. They had a memorial. We cried. Then we got suspicious. The house is on the market. They've been sorting out your affairs. We thought something was off, but while you are gone, we're so mad we could chew nails. When are you back? I told them. October 14th. They, being the loyal troublemakers they are, immediately offered logistical support. We'll pick you up, Liz wrote. You can stay at my place. We'll pretend you're still dead, at least around your son. Perfect. I wrote back. Let's give him 1 more week as an orphan. It'll make the reveal sweeter. Time passes strangely when you've been declared dead. Some days went slowly, each hour a reminder that I was stuck between lives. Other days flew by in a blur of children's mispronunciations and tea and bureaucracy. Kareem's boys progressed. Ahmed's English became fluent enough to argue with me about superhero movies. Yusuf started writing little stories in a crooked, careful hand. One evening, Kareem came home from work and found us at the table, books spread out, my glasses halfway down my nose. You have turned my house into a school, he said, half accusation, half pride. Consider it a pilot program, I replied. Don't worry, the real funding's coming. He frowned. Hannah, I meant what I said. I cut in. 3,000 back, plus 12 for your house and school. Maybe more if I feel particularly vindictive toward my retirement accounts. He shook his head. You have your own life to fix. Your son, your home, my home is a building, I said. My dignity is something else. I looked at Ahmed and Yusuf. Their mother wanted a school. She's getting a school. Kareem's eyes softened, his throat working. You talk like this, he said. My boys will never marry anyone. They will say, is she as brave as Hannah? No? Then we wait. Good, I said. Raise your standards. The world has enough mediocrity. October crept closer. I stored up little nuggets of information about life back home from Liz and Nora. How Ethan had taken over my spot in the church pew all spring, devastated widower act polished to perfection. How Brianna posted long, tearful tributes on social media about the tragic loss of a wonderful mother-in-law with photos of me she'd never bothered to like when I was alive. How they'd moved into my house in June, redecorated in July, and this one really painted my kitchen cabinets gray. Gray, Hannah, Nora wrote. Your nice oak cabinets. Gray, like a prison cafeteria. As God is my witness, I emailed back. Someone is going to suffer for that alone. By September, my flight was confirmed. The charity fare came through. The embassy printed my ticket. Kareem drove me to the capital the day before. The boys squashed in the back seat, sulking. You will come back? Yusuf whispered when we hugged goodbye outside the guest house. Try and stop me, I said. Kareem pressed a slip of paper into my hand. My email, he said, and the bank details for the village account when you are ready. In case you forget. I don't forget, I said quietly. Not debts, not kindness, not attempted murder. He laughed softly. Then go, Hannah. And be, what is the word? Terrifying. Insufferable, I corrected. I'm going to be insufferable. The flight home was long. Airports are strange places when everyone thinks you're dead. No one there knows it, of course. To the TSA agent, I was just another tired traveler with a temporary passport and a good story about losing my luggage. But when the plane touched down on American soil, my heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to punch its way out. Liz and Nora were waiting at arrivals, standing under a homemade sign that read "Welcome back from the dead" in glitter. You're ridiculous, I told them, hugging them both, breathing in the familiar smell of their drugstore perfume and laundry detergent. You're alive, Nora said into my hair. We went through the stages of grief for you. Twice. I demand a refund. We have so much to tell you, Liz said. But first, we're getting you a decent cup of coffee and something that isn't rice. At Liz's house, they sat me down at her kitchen table like I was an interrogation subject and they were the FBI. So, Nora said, how exactly do you want to handle this? Because Ethan's birthday party is tomorrow, and I happen to know thanks to a certain church group chat that it's going to be big. Of course it is, I said. He's got the tragic backstory now. Brave son, soldiering on after losing his beloved mother. Has he given any money to charity in my name at least? Oh yes, Liz snorted. They did a fundraiser for some elder abuse foundation. The irony almost killed me. The irony almost killed me. I took a long sip of coffee, letting the bitterness steady me. All right, I said. Here's what we're going to do. Step 1. Do not go home. At least not yet. Your house. It's not legally sold yet, Liz said. They've got it listed. There was an open house last weekend. People tromping through your bedroom in shoes. I almost set the place on fire. Tempting, I agreed. But arson is messy. We'll do this clean. The first call I made was to a lawyer, Janet Price, an old friend of my late husband who'd helped us with our wills years ago and never once tried to upsell me on anything. I didn't tell Ethan I was alive, but I sure as hell told Janet. Jesus, Hannah, she said over the phone. I read your obituary. Disappointing, wasn't it? I said. I would have liked a better picture. She snorted. Get into my office first thing Monday. Don't contact your son yet. We'll want to verify exactly what he's done with your accounts and your house. There are fraud statutes for this, potentially criminal ones. I fully intend to weaponize the law, I told her. But there's something I have to do first. Which is? She asked warily. Ruin his birthday party, I said. She was silent for a moment. I shouldn't encourage this, she said slowly. I really shouldn't. Then, what time should I be on Facebook? Ethan's birthday. I hadn't seen him in person in over 7 months. Part of me still remembered the feel of his baby weight in my arms, the smell of Johnson's baby shampoo in his hair. Another part remembered the dust on my tongue as his car got smaller and smaller against the dunes. Liz drove. Nora sat in the back seat clutching a casserole like a weapon. "People bring food to birthday parties, right?" she said. "It'll help us get in." I put extra cheese. No one says no to extra cheese. Brianna and Ethan had indeed moved into my house. My yard now had a tasteful slate path where my rosebush used to be. "There it is," I said. "The scene of the crime and the bad landscaping choices." Cars lined the street. Laughter floated through the open windows. I could smell grilled meat and hear the clink of glasses. "We go in, right?" Nora whispered, suddenly nervous. "Oh, we absolutely go in," I said. "You two go first. You're expected guests. You make sure everyone's in the living room. Then text me." "And you?" Liz asked. I patted the scarf around my hair and adjusted the oversized sunglasses I'd borrowed. "I give my son one last minute of believing he got away with it," I said. "It's more generous than he deserves." They went up the walk, Nora's casserole held high like an offering. I stayed across the street by the big maple tree, watching my own front door open and close. Faces I knew appeared in the frame: neighbors, church friends, a couple of my distant cousins. Liz slipped her phone out and texted, "Ready." We're all in the living room, fireplace. "And Hannah, they have your photo up, with a black ribbon." "Of course they did." "Perfect," I murmured. My heart was pounding hard enough to make me a little lightheaded. This was it. Months of sand, sweat, bureaucracy, and bad guesthouse mattresses, leading up to one front door. I walked across the street. My knees shook a little. Not from fear, from fury held in check. I opened my own front door and stepped inside. The sound hit me first. Voices, laughter, music. Someone had put up a banner that said "Happy Birthday, Ethan" in gold letters across the far wall of the living room. The sight hit me next. My living room was both familiar and wrong. My old sofa, my coffee table, but the rug was new, some abstract gray thing that looked like a storm cloud, and my walls were painted a tasteful shade called, I'm sure, urban fog or depression chic, and above the fireplace, on the mantel, was a large framed photo of me. It was one from a church picnic, taken a couple of years before John died. I was laughing, head thrown back, holding a plate of potato salad like it was a trophy. I looked happy, alive. Someone had tied a black ribbon around the top corner of the frame. I so read. "Excuse me," I said, loudly enough that the nearest cluster of guests turned. One of them, Marjorie from the choir, bless her heart, saw me, went bone white, and dropped her plastic cup of punch. The room went quiet in a rolling wave. Ethan was by the fireplace, a beer in his hand, laughing at something one of his buddies had said. Brianna, of course, stood beside him, in a dress that cost more than my first car. He followed Marjorie's stare. His eyes landed on me. For a heartbeat, he didn't recognize me. I was older, thinner, desert-worn. I was also supposed to be 6 feet under in the sands of Alcamar, not standing on his gray rug. Then he did. The blood drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. Mom?" he whispered. You could have heard a pin drop. Somewhere in the back, Nora started fanning herself with a paper plate. I took off my sunglasses and folded them, nice and neat, like I had all the time in the world. "Surprise," I said. "Did you miss me?" No one moved. It was like someone had hit pause. Every face in that room was turned toward me, eyes wide, mouths open. They were chained there by shock, by suspicion, by the sudden realization that this story was not what they'd been told. Brianna recovered first. "This is impossible," she breathed. You're dead." I raised an eyebrow. "Trust you to get even that wrong." We had a memorial," Ethan stammered. "They said you disappeared. We searched." "Oh, did you?" I cut in. "Is that what you told them?" I stepped further into the room, each step deliberate. Someone backed up to make space without realizing, like the sea parting. "I'm terribly sorry to interrupt your party," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It looks very festive. Love what you've done with the place. My compliments to the murderer and his accomplice." You could feel the oxygen leave the room. "Murderer?" Ethan croaked. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Oh, don't you dare," I snapped. "Don't you dare call me mom like you haven't earned yourself a permanent place in the estranged relatives column." I turned to the room at large. "You all know me," I said. "Hannah Lewis. I've sat next to most of you at church or PTA meetings or funerals. You came to mine apparently. Thank you for that. By the way, I'm sorry I couldn't attend." I was busy not dying in a foreign desert. A few people flinched. I want you to hear this from me, I continued. Since my son and his wife seem to have edited the details, I told them, not every gritty detail, not every hallucinated star, but enough. The trip, the gift, the Jeep, the photo op on the dune, Ethan's hand on the wheel, Brianna waving, the engine, the dust, the bottle of water. I watched them drive away, I said. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. They left me there. No phone, no money, no way to call for help. They came home and told you all I'd wandered off. Isn't that what you said, Ethan? That your poor confused mother got lost on vacation? Ethan swallowed. He opened his mouth. A sound came out, not words, a squeak. Brianna, though she rallied. That's not how it was, she said sharply. We went to get help. The Jeep we got lost the guide. You did not come back, I said, my voice cutting through hers like glass. Do not stand in my house and lie about what I saw with my own eyes. Maybe you're confused. She tried again. You were dehydrated. The doctors said I should be dead, I snapped. But I'm not, which is really very inconvenient for you, isn't it? A murmur rippled through the room. People shifted, glancing at each other. Marjorie from the choir suddenly found her voice. Ethan, she said slowly, is this true? He looked at her, at me, at the floor. His face crumpled, not with remorse, no. I know what my son's remorse looks like, but with fear. We panicked, he stammered. We argued. We got turned around. It was confusing. We thought that she must have gone back to camp. We looked. We told the authorities. You did not come back, I repeated, each word a nail. You did not send anyone. I was rescued by strangers who happened to be driving by. You filed your missing persons report, flew home, and within 6 months you had moved into my house and started selling my life off piece by piece. I gestured at the black ribbon portrait over the fireplace. And you did that, I added, which I might actually find more offensive. I was grieving, Ethan whispered. We were grieving. We thought you were gone. And that meant you had to sell my home as quickly as possible. I demanded. You couldn't leave my kitchen cabinets alone for 1 year? You couldn't wait to get your hands on my accounts? He flinched. I was your mother, I said, my voice low but carrying. I carried you. I held your hand through fevers and nightmares and that awful science project with the exploding volcano. I paid your tuition. I watched you promise to love that woman for richer or poorer while I wrote a check for your wedding reception. I took a breath. I did not do all that so you could leave me for dead in a foreign desert because you were tired of waiting for your inheritance. The silence in the room was heavy. People were shifting, edging away from Ethan and Brianna like the guilt might be contagious. Brianna's cheeks flushed an ugly red. You don't understand, she hissed. You were struggling. The house needed maintenance. The taxes. My finances are none of your concern, I said sharply. They are mine, or they were, until you decided to expedite the probate process. I turned slowly, making eye contact with as many people as I could. I want you all to remember this moment, I said, because there is a very good chance you will be asked, under oath sometimes, what you heard here. And I want you to be very clear about what was said. Their faces, neighbors, church friends, Ethan's colleagues were pale, eyes wide. They were pinned there, like I'd nailed their feet to the floor, chained to the truth of what they'd just heard. Now, I said briskly, clapping my hands once, I didn't come here to perform the world's most depressing monologue. I have things to do, lawyers to see, a house to reclaim, but I wanted this very public correction on the record before we proceed. I turned back to Ethan. Happy birthday, sweetheart, I said. Make a wish, maybe for leniency. And then I walked out. Nobody stopped me. No one dared. The air outside was cooler than inside, or maybe that was just the shock finally bleeding out of my system. My hands were shaking. I hadn't realized just how much anger I'd been holding until I'd poured it over that room like gasoline. Liz and Nora hurried after me. That was, Nora said weakly. That was biblical, Liz supplied. I think half the room repented on the spot. Good, I said. They can start by never inviting my son to another potluck. I took a deep breath. I need a phone, I said, and a ride to Janet's office. The next weeks were a blur of paperwork, meetings, and a kind of slow-motion warfare. Janet, bless her ruthless little heart, dove in with both feet. This is bad, she said, scanning the copies of the power of attorney documents Ethan had filed. Good for us. Bad for him. He signed affidavits stating you were presumed dead. used that to access your accounts, and transferred significant funds into joint accounts with his wife, all within months of your disappearance. Can we call that what it was? I asked. Attempted matricide with financial garnish. In legal terms, we're looking at fraud, elder abuse, possibly attempted murder if the DA is feeling bold and we can prove intent, she said. But even without the criminal side, we can absolutely claw this back civilly. The courts do not like heirs creative writing death certificates. I also want to revoke whatever rights he thinks he has to my estate, I said. Immediately, before I catch a cold and he gets ideas. She smiled grimly. We can do that. We filed to freeze the accounts he'd touched. We notified the realtor that the sale of the house was being disputed by its very alive owner. We scheduled a meeting with the local police and a detective who'd handled the missing person case months earlier. He looked like he'd swallowed a bee when I walked into the station. Mrs. Lewis? He said. But I went to your memorial. Sorry to disappoint, I said. Turns out I'm extremely hard to kill. We gave our statements. I told him everything again, this time with dates, names, hospital records, and contact information for Kareem and Laura, my rescuers, my witnesses. Why didn't you contact your family sooner? He asked gently. Because I didn't trust them, I said, and because I wanted proof. I wanted to see what they'd do when they thought I was gone. Now we've seen it. He nodded, eyes grave. We'll reopen the case, this time as a potential crime. Wonderful, I said. Let me know if you need me for the perp walk. In the middle of all that, life continued. In its stubborn little way, I moved back into my house after the judge signed an emergency order recognizing me as the legal owner pending investigation. Ethan and Brianna, under Janet's instruction, vacated before the sheriffs could be involved. They left quickly, like rats from a ship they'd drilled holes in themselves. The house smelled wrong. Their cologne, their candles, their too fancy detergent. My things were shoved into boxes in the garage, half labeled, half forgotten. I spent the first night walking from room to room like a ghost, touching walls, opening cabinets, reasserting my claim. In the kitchen, I stood in front of the newly gray cabinets and shook my head. You lost me and my oak, I said aloud. Unforgivable. I made a list: repaint the kitchen, change the locks, donate the ghastly abstract rug to someone I disliked. At the top of the list was one more important thing: pay Kareem back. It took about a month to untangle my accounts from the web Ethan had tried to weave around them. Once the bank accepted that I was, in fact, alive and that the court had questions about the recent transfers, things began to shake loose. The first thing I did, after covering my very modest living expenses and Janet's retainer, was walk into my bank branch with a folder of international transfer forms. Carmen, my teller, stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. Which, to be fair, she kind of had. Miss Lewis, she whispered. Ethan said there was a memorial. Yes, I said. Very moving, I'm sure. Listen, Carmen, sweetie, I promise I'll give you the entire sordid tale when I'm not about to change the destinies of about 40 children. She blinked. What? I slid the paper across the counter. I need to send $3,000 to this personal account, I said, tapping the first set of numbers. And $12,000 to this village school development fund. Same country, same general area. And yes, the amounts are correct. She scanned the forms. Is this related to? She began. Yes, I said. These are the people who did what my son did not. I paused. They saved me, they trusted me, and they believed me, sight unseen, when I said I'd pay them back. I intend to honor that. Her eyes got suspiciously watery. That's a lot of money, she said. Less than my son tried to steal, I replied, and infinitely better spent. We processed the transfers. I walked out of the bank feeling lighter than I had in months. It wasn't just about the money. It was the promise kept, the balance in some small way restored. That night, from my newly reclaimed kitchen, I sent an email to Kareem. Subject: a promise kept. Kareem, check your accounts. You should see $3,000 in your personal and $12,000 in the school fund. The house needs a proper roof. The boys deserve a room that doesn't leak, and your village children need walls that don't fall down when they sneeze. This is not charity. This is a down payment on the debt I owe you for my life, for your trust, and for the way your boys looked at me like I was some kind of hero long before I felt like one. Build Layla's school the way she dreamed it. Send me pictures. I want to see every brick. Love, Hannah. His reply came a day later. Hannah, I have no words. Ahmed and Yusuf have many words, all of them loud, so I will let them shout for me when you visit. The village may build a statue of you. I will tell them no, because you would not like pigeons on your head. We will rebuild. You will see. Come back when you are ready. Our home is your home. Your crazy friend, Kareem. I sat at my kitchen table, reading that, and felt something inside me unknot. My son had tried to erase me, but halfway across the world, a family I barely knew had carved a space with my name on it. As for Ethan and Brianna, oh, I didn't let them off easy. We never did get a full-blown trial. The district attorney was wary of hanging an attempted murder charge on what boiled down to she said in a foreign desert, even with my testimony, the embassy's reports, and Kareem's statement. But fraud, the DA understood. Ethan ended up facing charges for falsifying documents, misrepresenting my status to financial institutions, and improperly accessing my accounts. He took a plea deal: probation, community service, a massive fine, and a permanent mark on his record. Brianna, clever little viper that she was, slithered out of criminal charges, but not out of social consequences. It's hard to post inspirational quotes about family is everything when half your followers know you helped pick the desert. Civilly though, I had leverage. One afternoon, months after the birthday party, they came to my house at Janet's insistence. We sat at my dining room table, the same one where we'd shared birthdays and Thanksgiving dinners, now turned into a battlefield. Janet laid out the options in her calm, lethal voice. You can fight this, she told them. We'll go to court. It will be long, expensive, and very public. Your employers will know. Your friends already know part of it. We can subpoena them. Or Brianna snapped. Or you sign the agreement, Janet said. You acknowledge Hannah is the sole owner of this property and all accounts. You return any assets transferred to you. You forfeit any future claim on her estate. And you privately and publicly acknowledge her version of events. Publicly? Ethan whispered. Yes, I said. A nice, sincere statement, not some PR fluff. You tell people you lied. You tell them what you did. You answer questions without hiding behind we were grieving. That's insane, Brianna said. You can't make us do that. Oh, I can't make you, I agreed. But I can strongly encourage you by waving this little bundle of police reports and embassy statements under your employer's noses, dear. She glared at me. What do you want, Hannah? Ethan burst out. Money? We'll pay you back. I don't want your money, I said. I already have mine thanks to your spectacular incompetence. I want you to live with what you did. I want you to feel it every time you walk past a church or an old woman struggling with her groceries. I want you to remember that when it counted, you chose your bank account over your mother. He flinched. And one more thing, I added. If you ever want even a sliver of redemption in my eyes, you're going to help me. With what? He asked, guarded. With the school, I said. They blinked. The school? Brianna repeated. In Al-Kamar, I said. Where I didn't die, thanks to people 1,000,000 times better than you. I've sent money. They'll need more. Supplies, books, equipment, someone to help coordinate fundraising from here. I smiled, slow and sharp. Congratulations, I said. You always wanted a cause, Brianna. Now you've got one. You're going to use that fake grieving influencer energy for something useful. You're going to run every fundraiser, organize every drive, beg every company for donations. And you're going to do it under my supervision. That's not, she started. Legal? Janet cut in. It's not a court order. It's a personal condition. Hannah is offering not to pursue additional civil damages beyond what we've already negotiated. In return, you agree to participate in this volunteer work. Ethan stared at the table. You're making us your servants, he said. Don't be melodramatic, I said. I'm making you useful. There's a difference. Brianna's lip curled. And if we refuse? Then I pursue every avenue available to me, I said. I testify at every hearing. I talk to every reporter. I write letters to your employers and your church. I tell the story, over and over, until your names are synonyms for ungrateful parasite. I leaned forward. But if you help me, I continued, if you show up, month after month, and do the work, then maybe, one day, when I'm old and toothless and someone asks me about my son, I might say, he made a mistake, a terrible one, but he did something with it. The silence stretched. Brianna opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Ethan. He looked at me, eyes red-rimmed. What if we try, he whispered, and it's not enough? I swallowed the sudden ache in my throat. That, I said, is between you and your conscience. Mine will be busy helping 40 kids get a decent education. Janet slid the papers across the table. They signed. Their hands shook. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. A year after I came back from the desert, I found myself on a plane again. This time, I packed my own ticket, my own passport, my own phone, with approximately 16 backup chargers. When I landed in Alkamar, the air felt different, less like danger, more like unfinished business. Kareem and the boys were waiting just outside customs, craning their necks, holding a sign that said Grandmother of the Desert in wobbly English letters. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. Hannah, Yusuf yelled, barreling into me. You came back. Of course I did, I said, hugging him tight. Someone has to check on that school. Have you been slacking off? Never, Ahmed said, taller now, his voice breaking in the middle of the word like it couldn't decide how old he was. Kareem stood back for a moment, just watching, his eyes bright. You look strong, he said when I turned to him. I am strong, I said, and I brought reinforcements. On the ride to his village, I told them about the legal mess, the birthday party, the black ribbon, about Ethan and Brianna and the volunteer work they were doing under my very pointed supervision. You turned your punishment into our blessing, Kareem said quietly. That is a strange kind of justice. It's the only kind I believe in, I said. I don't want them just sitting in a cell. I want them sweating over grant applications and bake sales. He laughed. The village was smaller than I'd imagined, but busier. The school half built when we'd been emailing photos now stood solid and proud at the edge of town. Fresh paint, straight walls, a real roof. Children swarmed the yard, shouting, chasing a ball that had seen better days. As we pulled up, a group of adults came out to greet us, teachers, elders, people I'd heard about only through Kareem's stories. This is Hannah, he said in Arabic, then translated. The one I told you about, the stubborn American who refused to die. They laughed, eyes warm. An older woman round, with kind eyes and a scarf of deep blue took my hands. Thank you, she said in halting English. For Layla's dream. I swallowed hard. Thank you, I said, for letting a crazy American grandmother be part of it. We toured the school, classrooms with smooth floors, shelves built for books that were still coming in, donations trickling from churches and schools back home, a small, shiny generator that hummed in the corner like a contented cat. I stood in one doorway, watching a row of little girls copy words from a board. The teacher was explaining something, hands waving, the girls following, their faces intent. One of them glanced up, met my eyes, and grinned. I grinned back. This was what my son had tried to redirect into a new car and a bigger TV. This was where the money went instead. I felt no regret. That night, under a sky full of stars, that reminded me of that terrible first night in the desert, we sat on Kareem's rooftop eating rice and grilled meat. The boys argued over music. A neighbor dropped by with dessert. Someone's radio played a song I couldn't understand but liked anyway. You know, Kareem said, sipping his tea, if your son had not done what he did, we would never have met. I know, I said. It's the only thing that keeps me from smothering him with his own gray throw pillows. He chuckled. What will you do now? He asked. After this? Go home, I said. Paint my cabinets back to a color that doesn't look like sadness. Keep supervising my 2 indentured servants as they raise funds for this place. Take up a new hobby. Maybe skydiving. He raised an eyebrow. I'm kidding, I said. I've used up my adventure quota for this decade. I looked up at the stars. But I'll keep doing what I've always done, I added. Get up, make coffee, take care of what's mine. Only now, what's mine includes a little patch of desert school halfway across the world. He was quiet for a moment. You are not angry anymore? He asked. Oh, I'm still angry, I said. Anger's a good fuel source, but I'm not consumed by it. That would give them too much power. I'd rather channel it into something useful, like making sure your village has a better library than my hometown. He clinked his glass against mine. To useful anger, he said. To outliving your enemies and your children's expectations, I added. We drank. Sometimes late at night back home in Ohio, when the house is quiet and my knees ache and the clock in the hallway ticks too loudly, I think about that day on the dune. About my son's face as he looked back at me for the last time, believing he would never have to deal with me again. I don't forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I did something better than forgiveness. I outlived his worst decision. I turned his betrayal into a scholarship fund, a school, a new roof, a village of children learning English words like hope and stubborn and grandmother. I took the script he'd written for me, tragic dead mother, quiet inheritance and burned it in my own fireplace. Then I wrote a better one. If there's a moral here, it's this. You don't have to be young to be dangerous. You don't have to be strong to be unbreakable. And you sure as hell don't have to stay where someone leaves you. My name is Hannah. My son left me in the desert. I walked out, and I made damn sure he'd never forget it.